Good evening, colleagues. Time is now 6 o'clock. I ask that I be granted permission to keep my video off. Otherwise, I fear that it might interfere with the reception. We have essentially two items that we have asked the department, or rather the military ombuds, to brief us on. They can simply form one presentation. It's their presentation on their 2022-2023 annual report, as well as the update on the recommendations that they forwarded to the minister for a decision. And then
recording in progress.
Report will then consider the statutory report. And if we still have some few minutes left to then consider the minutes, the outstanding minutes, and then we close the meeting. So this is the agenda for tonight. And I'm not quite certain if we do have the quorum. Do we have the quorum, Nadipa?
Good evening, Chair. Not yet, Chair. We only have 5 members so far.
I don't hear you.
I'm saying, Chair, we only have 5 members. We don't have the quorum yet, Chair.
Don't have the quorum yet.
Chairperson, good evening. Sorry, my apologies. It seems like, am I correct that you are in an area that the reception is not very well because you are not so audible?
Not so audible there. Yes, that is my challenge.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. As long as we know, as long as we are aware, then we can adapt for that.
Please, no, thank you so much, Mr. Mare. Okay. Could just accept that we'll have to live with this. But I will ask Thabo to chair the meeting as soon as he joins the platform. Thank you very much.
I'm present myself. Can you move?
Oh yes, Honorable Motomai, you are welcome. Let me welcome the colleagues in the meeting. I'll start with the Deputy Minister. Welcome him. Deputy Minister, good evening and welcome.
Good evening, honorable members. Good evening. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much. And whilst on this, I need to table the apology of the Minister of Defense. She is double booked and she will not be in the meeting. Let me also welcome the Military Ombuds, General Masondo, and the colleagues that are in the meeting to support him. Good evening, General Masondo. I couldn't hear a word. I don't know if it's because the problem is on my side.
Good evening, Chair. Sorry, we're battling here with our microphones. Yes, Chair, I'm joined in the meeting by members of my management team, and we're looking forward to the interaction, Chair. Thank you very much.
No, thank you very much, General. Without much ado, I will ask, let me just check if there are any other apologies, Nandipa, to record.
No, Chair, no other apology.
Chairperson, just from my side, Honorable Shalembe is just on another virtual meeting at the moment, and as soon as he's finished, he will join us.
Oh, no, thank you very much. We'll just record that as the apology for late arrival. No, thank you so much. And right, so I want to accept that we have dealt with that item. We can then now move to the next item and request General Masondo, the Military Ombud, to take us through the two presentations, after which the DM will make some comments, and then we go through, and then we discuss the report. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Please allow me to also greet other members of the Joint Standing Committee, and also to extend my greetings to our Minister in absentia and the Deputy Minister. I will then commence with the presentation, if I'm audible, Chair. Well, the aim of our presentation is to present to the Joint Standing Committee on Defense the Office of the Military Ombud Annual Activity Report for the financial year 2022-2023. To do this, we are going to cover the following topics: introduction, overview of performance against plan, actual performance against plan, historical overview of cases, analysis of complaints received, implementation of Military Ombud recommendations, and we look also at our expenditure report for the year under review, and also the number of reports submitted to the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans, and finally we'll conclude. By way of introduction, Honorable Chair and members, we just recap the mandate of the office, which is to investigate complaints received from serving and former members of the South African National Defence Force concerning their conditions of service, and members of the public regarding the official conduct of a member of the SANDF or a person acting on behalf of a member. I'm really happy to report to the Joint Standing Committee that we were able to, as an office, to resolve 82% of the complaints that we received, thereby exceeding the target that we actually set for ourselves of 75%. Also, it is gratifying to the office to report that we are drastically reducing the carryover complaints, and this is owing to the improvements in the investigation turnaround times as a result of our interactions with the defense and the service chiefs and various stakeholders. I must mention that the office continues to receive new complaints that have been lodged by serving members of the SANDF concerning their conditions of service. It's important to note that a significant milestone for the office during the period under review was the hosting of the annual Military Ombud Symposium and the 10-year anniversary of the office, where we were fortunate enough to be joined by other ombudspersons from the SADC region. Looking at the overview of the performance against plan for the year 2022-23, well, as captured in our annual performance plan, we've got two outcomes there. The first one being fair, economical, and expeditious resolution of written complaints, with the outcome indicator being percentage of written complaints resolved fairly, economically, and expeditiously within the Office of the Military Ombud. The second one is accountable and effective governance of the Office of the Military Ombud, The focus here is compliance with the submission dates as stipulated in the national prescripts. And of course, the target, we cannot compromise on that because the target is 100%, and we're able to report that we're able to achieve that target. And of course, I've already reported in terms of the performance of the office, what we attain. Next, we want to look at the actual performance against plan. We opened the year with 58 carryover complaints from the financial year 21-22. And of course, in the year under review, we received 350 complaints, which then means that in totality, we had a caseload of 408 complaints. And we were able to actually finalize 335 of these and carried over 73 cases. On this slide, we're focusing your attention, chair and members, on the carryover cases. And if we start with financial year 1920, we'll observe that we started that financial year with 279 cases. In 2021, these were reduced to 148. In 21-22, these were actually reduced further to 88, and in 22-23 to 58. But at the end of the previous financial year, we carried over 73 cases. It's important to know that 4 of those cases were legacy cases, which we've subsequently been able to resolve. But the rest of the cases are those that we actually receive towards the end of the financial year. We have set ourselves a yardstick of actually completing complex cases within a period of 12 calendar months. So we hope we'll be able to comply with that, even with these cases. Coming to analysis of complaints received for the year, we're going to look at this by first looking at contacts logged during the year, and then the nature of complaints, then categories of complaints received, profile of complainants, rank level of complainants, gender distribution, complaints by service division and the public, the geographic spread of the complaints, and finally at the manner of finalization. In terms of contact logs, all in all, we had about 382 of these. 183 were actually telephone inquiries, 105 walk-in inquiries, and the 94 is electronic inquiries. This covers emails and posting on social media that required attendance from operational staff. Next, we look at the nature of complaints. Of the 350 complaints that we received, 307 of these were about conditions of service, and 32 about official conduct of SANDF members, and the 11 is another other category. By this, we mean those that fall outside the mandate of the office, such as military veterans benefits, domestic disputes, and intimidation, not in an official capacity. Next, we're looking at categories of complaints received. And we will notice that the majority of these, that is 66, were about remuneration issues. And it's understandable given the financial situation in the country. And of course, the next was about service termination. and then followed by service benefits. But yeah, I need to focus your attention on those that were able to carry over, especially looking at cases of official conduct. These tend to take long because sometimes they have to be inspection in local, and that process in itself is cumbersome, which is why actually the majority of those that we carried over about the official conduct of a member. Of importance to note is that of the 88% of the complaints registered were actually about service conditions. Next, we're looking at the profile of the complainants, where 200 of these were current members, 106 former members, and 44 members of the public. And then from that 44, as earlier indicated, 32 about the official conduct complaints, with the balance being members complaining on behalf of serving members, maybe around pension issues and termination benefits. Now, looking at complaints per service, division, and public, of course, the majority of these, they come from the Army, since it is the biggest service in the Defense Force, and of course, followed by the Air Force. But it's important to note that SAMS, although it is the smallest service, has more complaints than the Navy. And of course, the issue here has been the issue of complaints around issues of OSD. But since those are getting resolved, I think the numbers are going down. Next, we're looking at complaints per rank level. Here it's important to know that the majority of these, 143, come from non-commissioned officers, and about, of course, 65 from other ranks, and 35 from senior officers. But when you look at those from senior officers and NCOs being so high, it suggests that there is a problem, because those are the ranks that should be supervising the other ranks, that is lower ranks. In terms of gender distribution, 80% of the complainants, complaints received were from male members, and about 20% from the females. In terms of the geographic spread of the complaints, the majority, 129, from Gauteng, followed by Limpopo. And of course, the people in Gauteng have got an added advantage that they can actually come in person to complain to the office and be assisted with their complaints. Hence, generally, we find that the majority of complaints come from Gauteng. I also need to point out that as an office, we use this information in terms of planning our outreach projects, focusing on those provinces where we get a low number of complaints. The intention not being to instigate that members must actually complain, but to try and raise awareness so that if they have problems, then they can approach our office. And then looking at the manner of finalization, you'll notice that the majority of these 160 are issues that where we declined jurisdiction because members of the Defense Force didn't follow the internal grievance system. And of course, the other category of about 33 are those dismissed because they fall outside the mandate of the office. I need to focus the attention of the committee to the fact that as an office, we are striving to resolve many of our complaints through ADR where that is possible, because we see this as a low-hanging fruit in terms of speedy finalization of complaints. We now look at the implementation of the Military Ombud recommendation. And I want to commence by saying through the memorandum of understanding that the office has with the Secretary for Defense and the Chief of the SANDF, we have initiated and constituted the Military Ombud and Chief SANDF Liaison Forum. And in terms of the MOU, each service and divisional chief shall nominate his or her liaison officer mandated to represent such a chief in the forum. From the office, we actually have seconded to the forum 2 directors from our operational environment. The standing agenda of the forum covers issues like Chief of the Defense Force input to applications to condone late referral of complaints. Also look at those matters that are under investigation, where we are awaiting responses from interested parties, and also matters where the Military Ombud has issued a report and made recommendation for implementation, and the minister has accepted those recommendations and instructed the Chief of the Defense Force to implement. Of course, matters not resolved during the liaison forum meetings are then elevated to the monthly meeting that I usually hold with the Chief of the Defense Force, where we then try to resolve those issues that cannot be resolved at the liaison forum level. The Ombud also has ad hoc meetings with chiefs of services and divisions regarding investigations and implementation. These are meant to try and improve turnaround times. And as stated earlier, these are working to ensure that we can expeditiously deal with the complaints that we receive. There are currently recommendations that were accepted by the previous minister, and where she instructed the CSNDF to implement. And now we look at those in terms of whether they are implemented or still pending implementation. And as stated above, the level of implementation is sometimes communicated and sometimes responded to on inquiry. But currently, the Ombud has a well-established relationship with the chief and staff officers mandated to attend the liaison forum. Next, we are looking at the expenditure of the office. Before looking at the actual figures themselves, I need to point out that we, as an office, we struggle with the allocation we receive for compensation of employees. The money allocated does not cover payment of all staff members, and we're always over-expending on this item. And also to point out that in terms of our operational budget, we're also struggling to spend there because of dependence on the Department of Defense, where sometimes we're not promptly and adequately supported. So far, I've not been able to spend more than 40% of my operational budget. Now coming to the actual allocation and expenditure, in total we're allocated an amount of 66.730 million, and we're able to spend 56.134. And in terms of compensation of employees, we allocated 40,461,000, and we're able to spend 44.074. And of course, on our operational budget, the allocation was 26,269,000, and then we spent 12,061,000. Next, we're looking at our expenditure per economic classification, where in terms of payments, that is compensation of employees and goods and services, the final appropriation was 63,335,000, and we're able to spend 53,229,000. And in terms of transfers and subsidies, allocation was 151, and we're able to spend 87 million. And lastly, in terms of purchase and construction capital assets, allocation was 3.282 million, and we're able to spend 2,817,000. Now coming to feedback on progress with the reports that were submitted to the minister. In totality, that is up to 15 September this year, we've submitted to the office of the minister 178 reports, 108 of which were reports that were upheld, where recommendations were made for remedial action. The remaining reports were matters resolved through alternative dispute resolution and submitted to the minister for endorsement. And the other category are those that we either referred to other entities or dismissed. Included in the stats is the Section 611 investigation that was commissioned by the minister regarding the spoiled and or rotten food and drinking water provided to members deployed in Mozambique, which is actually included in the stats for financial year 21-22. Honorable Chair and members, I'm very happy to report that subsequent to our submission of this presentation, we have received feedback from the office of the minister, where they indicated to us that they've been able to deal with 107 of the reports that were submitted to the minister. And of course, we are busy now with a process of reconciliation to determine how many of these are those that were upheld and how many of these the minister had to take note. And I think once we have been able to finalize all that staff work, we'll be able then to provide a written report to the Joint Standing Committee on where we are with the reports submitted to the minister. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair and members. We are now ready to take your question.
Thank you very much, General Masondo. I was just struggling a bit with this phone of mine. I think it's getting old, the gadget I'm using. Am I audible, Honorable Member?
Yes, Honorable Mutle, you are.
All right, yeah, as the Chair has requested that I hold the fort for him, hence I'm stepping in. Honorable members, may you, now the opportunity is yours to interact with the presentation from, let me look who has raised the hand on the platform. Honorable Murray, I see your hand, and
Yes,
you'll be followed by Honorable Ryder.
much appreciated. Thank you for the presentation. General, I just wanted to start off by asking two questions. How many complaints have you received with regards to MEM, where members apply for MEM and then they, cannot get it signed off? And the other one is medical contributions, where they deduct or depend on the members to pay more for the medical cost than what their initial contract was with the Department of Defense and the National Defense Force. That's the first one. If I can go to slide 17, I just wanted to get clarity on that finalization that was reported there. When you look at the complaints dismissed, matters pending before court, in terms of section 71B, what does I understand that it's before a court, but does that mean that you don't take a position and do not make any recommendation to the minister with regards to codes of conduct, etc., within the Department of Defense? So if there's a technical reason why a judge might throw out the case, then it means that that person is off the hook. I want to ask that, and the second one as well, the one just after that, matter was decided by court. So if a court decides on a matter, does that mean that even if he is not punished in terms of internal regulations and procedures and transgressions of that, then he's also off the hook? I find that very, very strange. And then the next one, due to extreme late lodging, are there expiries with regards to submissions of any complaints to the Military Ombud? And what are normally the reasons for those extreme late lodging, whatever that means? The other one I want to ask about is a complaint referred to an institution that is better suited. Now, what does that mean, and what institutions are better suited for what type of cases that is referred to you in your office? The next one I want to ask is complaints upheld on merits of complaints. What does that mean in reality, in practice? Does that form part of your recommendations? Is it referred back to wherever that employee is coming from, and then that is on merits of the complaint is upheld? What does that mean in reality? And also the same one for matters resolved in terms of section 66B, alternative dispute resolutions. Does that mean that you don't take a position on that, and you make no recommendation or report to the minister? That's the first one that I want to just ask clarity on. The other one that I want to ask clarity on is in slide 22. I just want to get clarity. These are the reports submitted to the minister specifically. Now, 60% of those reports, so 22, was dismissed. That's quite a huge number. And I want to ask, is any reasons given for that? What is the merits of that? And does that instill confidence with the system and yourself and the employees? And are any reasons given for complaints dismissed? Because that is significant number that the minister, in other words, where you make certain recommendations and the minister just dismissed that. That link to the last page, and that is the crux of, I think, what we are dealing with. We have mentioned in the past that you are not a Section 9 institution. You've got basically no powers. You can only make recommendations. You spend about 56 million rand with a budget of 66 million rand, which is significant in terms of the problems and financial problems that we have got in the Defence Force. Now, if you look at that last page, the conclusions, that first one, you are talking about 108 complaints were upheld in terms of your act. But for me, my question is, what does that mean in reality when complaints are being upheld? Is it only where you find it positive? Do you make recommendations in that regard? Because just the previous page, we've seen that 60% of the report submitted to the minister is dismissed. So what does that mean in reality? And then quite to the bottom where you are saying it remains unknown to the Military Ombud whether the minister has accepted, rejected, or endorsed any of the reports submitted to her. Now, that is where we've got a problem where we must take note and say, is this value for money? Because remember what you have said in page 22, 60% dismissed. So if there's no enforcement that you have got, if you find, make a certain finding, a justified finding and make a recommendation, and 66% is rejected. Now, that's one of the reasons why I ask whether reasons are being given, because that can make you, that can nullify the justification for the office of the Ombud if you don't have any powers. And then the second point that you make there, it also remains unknown to the Military Ombud whether the minister has instructed the Chief of Defence to implement any of the recommendations contained in the reports. Does that include the Secretary of Defence as well in the Department of Defence, or is it only the Chief of the SANDF that you are referring to? But that's a similar problem. If they dismiss your cases, even the few that you find on merit that you make recommendations to her office, and that is 60% is rejected, and you get no feedback, and you don't know what's going on, that is a major problem for the future of your office. And I certainly want you to respond to that, because I have got a major concern. And even one must ask the question, so what is the value and what does this mean for us going forward? Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Honorable Ryder.
Yes, good evening, Acting Chair. Thank you very much indeed. And yeah, thanks for the time that was put into presenting the presentation and collating it. I think that my main thrust is going to be to find out a little bit more about the content of the complaints that you're getting. So if you can give us kind of the indication was that a lot of the complaints relate to conditions of service. What does that mean? Is there a common thread? Are people unhappy with the fact that they have to work the hours that they do? Is it a financial issue, or is it to do with the state of the offices or the housing or whatever? If you can tell us what the typical complaint looks like, and perhaps indicate for us, is there a specific barracks where there are a lot of complaints emanating from, and where it's found that there are issues there, for us to be able to then go there and see for ourselves. So yeah, what I would like to get to is more than picking out of your report. I want to understand what the issues are that are causing the level of complaints that they are doing. And I'd like to invite you to tell us how we can help you do your work, but also help the soldiers and try and get to the bottom of some of the issues that are giving rise to a lot of the complaints, the majority of the complaints, or even a few, something that's practical that we can do. So if you can perhaps give us a few examples of where conditions of service are not up to standard, and explain to us exactly what that means. That's that simple. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Ryder. General Masondo, maybe deal with the two, and then I will take another round of questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I will deal directly with the easy ones, and the rest I'll refer to my staff because they deal with these on a day-to-day basis. If I may start with the questions from Honorable Mare, particularly on the slide, last slide there, those bullet points where we're saying it remains unknown to the Military Ombud whether the minister has accepted, rejected, or endorsed any of the reports submitted to her. And also it remains unknown to the Military Ombud whether the minister has instructed CSNDF to implement any of the recommendation. When we're preparing the presentation, that was the status. And as I said during the presentation itself, we have subsequently received feedback from the Office of the Minister, where they indicated to us that they've been able to deal with 107 of these reports. And of course, they were showing that some of the reports required the minister to actually instruct the Chief of the Defense Force to implement remedial action, and some of those were for noting. And therefore, we're currently doing some reconciliation in terms of being able to provide a comprehensive feedback or report to the committee in terms of this 107, how it was dealt with per data that we actually have in the office. And then okay, then also there's a question of what does it exactly mean when we say complaints have been upheld. In short, I can say when we investigate a complaint and find that actually the complainant has a valid complaint based on the facts that we have gathered during the investigation itself, then we normally recommend to the minister remedial action so that at least the complainant complaint can be addressed, and it can then be made happy in terms of the issues that he is aggrieved about. And I would like, therefore, then to first request director intake and analysis where they receive these complaints, and just to see if you'll be able to respond to the initial question with respect to MEM and medical contribution, and then I would ask legal to respond to the issues of matters pending before court or matter decided by the court. Well, in terms of extreme lodging or extreme lateness in terms of lodging a complaint, our act requires the complainants to lodge complaints within 180 days of them being aware of an issue that aggrieves them. So if the complaint comes to us later than that, then we have to look at it and in terms of whether we are justified to actually condone it. And perhaps legal can also take the committee through the issues that we look at when we actually have to condone the lateness of the complaint. And of course, also, I think there's a question that that requires explanation about complaints that are resolved through ADR, Alternative Dispute Resolution. In my presentation, I indicated that this is the method that we try and use as an office to make, to ensure speedy resolution of complaints. Because when a complainant complains and we contact the interested party and find that somehow in their response, they somehow acknowledge that they were at fault. So instead of trying to take more time investigating the complaint, we try and bring the complainant and the respondent together so that we can agree on a solution that is acceptable. And once that solution is acceptable to both entities, then we then consider the matter resolved and then send it to the minister for endorsement. If I may now first ask Mr. Bear just to take us through the other question, please.
Thank you, General, Honorable Chair and members. Yes, Honorable Murray, we do receive complaints regarding MEM applications. Often it relates to the initial quote they received and the final payout. There was one complaint complainant that indicated that he had actually made himself available, had a career interview where it was supported, and he has not yet received outcome thereon. So there are such complaints. They are not that many, but there are some. In terms of the medical contributions, it often comes from former members, where after retirement or early retirement or medical retirement or retirement due to medical conditions, they find themselves in a position where they have paid up to the point of 60, and now there's an additional medical contribution that they have to pay. Often they may not have been aware at the time, the communication did not reach them, and they find it out when bills are not paid. Others indicate that they never knew and then find out. We have had instances where members complain to us, former members, that they find themselves in a position where they are not financially able to pay it. So there have been such complaints as a confirmation. General, yes, and then I think you said the rest would be answered by Ms. Pillay.
No,
okay, the complaints refer to an institution that may be better suited. We often find that typically there would be a complaint regarding a matter of pension payout, for example. And we have the ombudsman for the GEPF. So in such instances where the defense has concluded its part, but at that point in time where the matter is that complainant is complaining about is better suited to deal with by the pension ombudsman for the GEPF, then we would refer it there. It may also be that it is the health ombud for instance, and so forth. So those happen in terms of the various memoranda of understanding the ombud has with these ombudsman institutions, as an example. And then for Honorable Reiner on conditions of service, the 28 listed in Section 1 of the Defence Act as amended. So as Defence Act Section 1 lists approximately 28 different conditions of service. And in our Act, our conditions of service, or the term conditions of service, refers thereto. Now, one that was mentioned by General, which specifically related to service benefits, which is fairly high. The Act, the Defence Act, only states service benefits, but typically one would find matters there dealing with medals and awards, medical benefits, pension benefits, leave benefits, maybe issues of demilitarization if it's former finance functionaries, and or funeral and death benefits as an example of the service benefits. But the rest are all listed in the Defence Act under Section 1. Okay, general, yeah, thank you. And then complaints upheld on its merits. It depends on what the complaint was about and what the complainant would see as a resolve to his or her complaint. So the merits mean we've gone through the whole investigation process. We've looked at all the facts and evidence. And at the end thereof, we find that on the merits of the complaint before us, we uphold the complaint. And then we make recommendations to the Minister, Defence, for implementation as a remedy to resolve that complaint that was before us. However, when we dismiss a complaint on its merits, the opposite applies. In other words, the complaint was in essence without merit, and it could not sway the favor into that of the complainant. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Good evening, Honourable Chair and members of the committee. So I'm going to just answer the questions relating to Section 7 of the Act. And if you look at Section 7, it basically deals with the limitation of jurisdiction on the Military Ombud. So with Section 7(1) B specifically and 1C, it's matters pending before court and matters that was decided by a court. So sometimes we usually find complainants will submit a complaint and not inform us that their matter is pending before a court of a civilian court or the High Court for that matter. And they would also not inform us that on the flip side, they would not inform us that the matter was already decided by a court. So it's something that we would accept for jurisdiction. However, during the course of the investigation, we would discover this. Now, the Act specifically provides that the Military Ombud may not investigate matters that is either pending before a court of law or that has already been decided before a court of law. So it's pretty simple because it's a limitation of jurisdiction on the Military Ombud in as far as investigating these complaints are concerned. And the other issue relating to extreme late lodging. So the Act also provides in Section 2C that a complaint must be lodged within a reasonable period of time. And you would note that the Act does not explain what a reasonable period of time is. So we do have the complaints regulations of 2015, which guides us with specific criteria to determine whether or not, the Act can be condoned for late lodging. So sometimes what we find is when we go through the specific criteria listed there, the complainants fail to give us reasons as to why they have taken a specific or a very long period of time to lodge a complaint with the office. And due to that, balancing it together with the other criteria, we would decide not to accept that matter. So it's basically directed by legislation, but also in order to ensure that the Military Ombud applies his discretion objectively in accordance with the facts, we have the regulations that make specific provision on a time frame within which these complaints should be lodged with the office. And then I think I can touch on Section 7(2)D as well, if I can remember whether or not that was a question asked. But nevertheless, just to assist you, Section 7(2)D also provides that the Military Ombud may not investigate a complaint if a complainant has not followed the internal grievance regulations, within the SANDF. And sometimes we find that a complaint will not exhaust the internal remedies, but come directly to the Military Ombud. And we will then refer the complaint back, to say, rather follow your internal remedies and then come through to us. However, the Military Ombud also has a discretion to accept that complaint if the complainant does not follow the internal remedies, only in circumstances where we find that there may be, certain challenges within the system that prevents that specific complaint from progressing. And based on the exercise of discretion there, the Ombud would then accept the complaint. Yes, I think I've answered all of them. And maybe just to add on the issue of ADR, in terms of Section 66B of the Military Ombud Act as well, the Ombud is or can use alternative dispute resolution methods like mediation, conciliation, etc. And we, like the Ombud may have said, just to add, we use that as an early resolution method where we can find that complaints can be resolved within a shorter period of time. And rather than going into a long, complex, drawn-out investigation, we would then use ADR to try and mediate between the parties or conciliate between the parties in order to ensure that we can arrive at a solution that is agreeable to the parties. So that's basically just my addition on Section 66B. Thank you, Chair.
Perhaps there's a portion of Honorable Ryder's question that was not answered, where he wanted to know whether do we know if the majority of complaints come from certain identified units and all that. That information we don't have at hand. We may have to go back to our database and extract that, make an analysis and extract that from the, and then if required, we can then provide it to the committee. Thank you very much. I think we have attempted to.
Okay, thank you very much. Who's unmuted? Comrade, Honorable Mutapo, your mic is not, it's open and you are disrupting the meeting. Okay, thank you very much, Honorable, General and the team, honorable members. I will afford you an opportunity once more if you still want to follow up or raise other questions. Honorable Mutabo. It doesn't look like there's any question in relation to okay, there's a hand of Honorable Pesle.
Good evening, Minister and DM and everyone in the platform. I'm not too sure, Chairperson, whether should I say it's a question or is a concern or is a schooling part of it.
Even a comment is welcome.
Yeah, I'm not too sure, but someone will pick it up. Where does it fall? I heard when there were the presentation that is welcomed, when they said they reported to the minister up until on the 15th of September. Then I am just concerned as to, from the questions that I earlier on heard, as to whether the minister has responded to all the questions or the recommendations for that matter. Is it really appropriate for anyone who's in office when you are given such a kind of responsibility to respond on that are very much crucial? 8 days, can it be sufficed to can respond to number of staff that is maintained with complaints, particularly on the issue of recommendations, if I heard correctly, that the minister has not responded on the recommendations and they're not sure. But does it mean recommendation you just endorse, or you should also go back and check if are there no loopholes from those very recommendations? How would the minister's office is it expected to deal with that aspect? If they can help me to understand in that reporting session. Thanks, Chair.
All right, thank you. I see this iPhone 3. Who's, is it Honorable Mutsamai?
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, I just want to know, there are a lot of cases, especially complaints of military veterans who their houses have been taken by the civilians and nothing happened from the department. I want to know when or how many cases have been reported to them, and when the action has been going to be taken to return the people to the rightful place, or especially military veterans. And there are toy within the Department of the Military Veterans that this Department of Ombudsman has received a lot of complaints about these people, but nothing have been sorted out. Especially people they've never benefited their military pension. People, some of them they are dying.
Honorable Mutsamai.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, no, your question is noted. I'm not sure whether it falls within the jurisdiction of the ombuds.
Yes,
but
yes.
it's noted. It's noted. I don't want to respond on his behalf, but yeah, your question is noted. Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, General Masondo, with regard to the last question relating to military veterans, I'm not sure whether that falls within your jurisdiction, but you will indicate.
Yeah, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. The question from Honorable Mutsamai actually falls outside the jurisdiction of our office, but we do receive complaints about military veteran issues, and because we've got a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Military Veterans, we then refer these to them for resolution. Then, if I may respond to part of the question by Honorable Person, where she was trying to find out whether our recommendations are just limited to remedial action in terms of the complainant themselves, or do we look at other broader issues? Yeah, what we do as an office, if we see that there are a number of complaints on a specific issue, and perhaps there's a problem with implementation of police and all that, we then highlight those to the Chief of the Defense Force as a systemic issue, so that he can be able to zoom into that and make sure that it is corrected, to avoid a situation where many members of the SANDF would be complaining about that issue. So it's part of the process we do in the course of our work. I hope I've been able to respond adequately just to that part, because the other part that was raised, I don't think I'm competent enough to respond on that, because that falls within the purview of the ministry. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no. Thank you very much, General Masondo, for those responses. I also wanted to raise one or two issues. Unfortunately, I did not see the minister in the meeting, but I have seen the deputy minister. I'm not sure if he will be able to deal with the other part of Honorable Pethe that relates to ministry. And my concern around what you have presented to this committee in relation to the indication from the officers to out of actually what the report that you have given us in terms of the recommendation that we have made to in terms of the cases or submissions made to the office of the minister, but subsequent to that you have got no idea in terms of the recommendation as to how many are implemented, so forth and so on. It's unfortunate that the minister is not in the office to be able to clarify that particular concern or question. I'm not sure if there's anyone from the office of the minister who will or the who will be able to take us into confidence, but nevertheless, maybe let me invite the DM. Well, we are not. If the DM you have no information with regard to these matters, we will understand. DM, your input.
Acting Chair and members of the Joint Standing Committee, the report that the Military Ombud has shared with the Joint Standing Committee is a report which, from the side of the ministry, the minister would be able to share, I want to believe, in the meetings coming when she is in attendance, whatever helpful observations that she has made regarding the work of the military ombuds. Because the office of the military ombud reports directly to the minister's office, I'm unable to share any useful information to help the committee members understand the issues better than the way they've been articulated. However, in the meeting this evening, there are officials from the minister's office. The advisor to the minister, Mr. Mutumi, is in the meeting. General Twala is also in the meeting. I don't know if from their side there is any information that they would want to share or comments that they may want to add to what has been said so far. I would leave it to you, Chair, whether you want to invite them, the officials from the minister's office, to make any additions to the matters that were contained in the presentation by the military. But from where I sit, the presentation, the report, for me, it's it's very clear. It's very clear. The information is very clear, and it is properly packaged and shared for the oversight to see what the picture is. I can say that there is an area in the report where it would help if there is information for the Office of the Ombud to comment about, which is that in relation to the number of reports submitted to the minister in this year under review, I note that already just in the first 2 quarters of this financial year to the 15th of September, the number of cases are already double of what was reported in the last financial year, which is what the report is covering, 22-23. Just over the last 2 quarters in this financial year, they've already doubled that number of cases reported or submitted to the minister's office. But if there is no additional information they can share, it is just an observation. Thank you very much, Chair.
All right. Thank you very much, TM. I'm not going to invite the advisors of the minister, because I'm not sure if they are mandated to respond on behalf of the minister. But what we can do is what they can do actually is to note the outstanding question that needs the attention of the minister, and the committee will then formally forward those part of Honorable Petla's question and the concern that I've raised in a written format for the minister to respond to those concerns or questions, and they will be submitted back to the Joint Standing Committee. I think in that way it will assist the process and a follow-up when we will be engaging with the military ombuds. Those questions will be underlined, or alternatively the office of the minister will be required to expatiate on those concerns if we have not received them in a written. We have not received the written responses by then. So I want to rule on that matter, on that note, and then and conclude the discussion on that note on this presentation from the military ombuds. With that said, let me thank General Masondo and your team for the presentation and availing yourself to come and brief the Joint Standing Committee on the matters presented. So thank you very much. We are now moving to the second item on the agenda, which is the consideration of the study tour. General Masondo, DM, if you wish to withdraw at this point, you are more than welcome to do so, as we will be dealing with internal affairs or matters of the Joint Standing Committee, which is the study tour report, and from there, we'll be considering minutes.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And thank you very much to the Military Ombud. Thank you.
All right, no, thank you, DM. Thank you, General Masondo. Yes, Dr. Willem, you may take us through.
Thank you, Chair, and good evening to members. I will take you through the draft report that was circulated to members. Just apologies for my voice. I'm a bit on the sick side, so my voice is not doing very well, but I hope I'm audible. I will take you through the draft report as members have received it, and just to highlight some aspects throughout the report, and then maybe focus on the observations and recommendations at the end. So just to recap, that this is the draft report for the study tour to Germany that was conducted over the period 25 June to the 1st of July. And this will then be dated not 5 September, but on the date that the committee agrees to the content hereof. First of all, to start off with the primary aims of the study tour, and members will recall that there were two primary aims, looking at force structure and force design. There was the one focus area of the study tour, and then secondly, looking at the defense industry and parliamentary oversight of the defense industry. Those were the two primary focus areas. The next page contains the members and staff that went on this study tour. And then we commence with the background to the study tour. Firstly, a rationale for the study tour, with the two overarching areas that may benefit from an international study tour. We really tried in this report to make it clear to an external reader of this report as to why it was necessary for such a tour. And here we look back at the work of Parliament's two defense committees and highlighting the two areas that can benefit from an international study tour, the one being force structure and force design, and the other, of course, being the defense industry and military state of preparedness. Then there was also a focus on the study tour selection process. We decided to include this in the report, again, to make it apparent to an external reader as to why Germany was selected and why these focus areas were selected, and that this was not just a run-of-the-mill decision by the committee, that there was actual processes and thought put into this decision to go on the study tour, and there's a number of meetings where the committee met to discuss this. The next section, section 3, section 3 focuses on the study tour program, which members are familiar with. And then the next, as of section 4, we look at the actual engagements. Starting on the first day, we had a briefing by the South African military attaché, and this a quick summary of the engagement, and then a discussion by the committee. All the sections that will follow have the same layout, with a quick summary of the engagement and then discussions by the committee. And here and there, I will highlight some aspects. During the briefing of the military attaché in Berlin, members, for example, just to highlight two aspects, what members found interesting was the training opportunities that countries such as Germany offer that could be open to South African soldiers as well. And also, she focused a lot on the importance of defense technology in the German armed forces, and members also focused specifically on that point. The same day, there was an engagement with Hensoldt. And again, here's a short briefing, a short summary of the briefing from Hensoldt. Specifically, they focused on the overview of the export control regimes in both South Africa and Germany. And members noted that there's no major difference experienced in the two arms control regimes. Hensoldt specifically produces class 3 products, which are not significantly impacted by arms control regimes as class 1 and 2 products, which like sharp point ammunition and missiles and so forth. And members also expressed the need to visit Hensoldt facilities in South Africa. And perhaps something important, members highlighted was that Hensoldt noted that the DCAC processes are manual and therefore are resource dependent and often time consuming as well. The next day there was a visit, members will recall, to the German parliament, the Bundestag, and there was a briefing received from the staff of the Bundestag, noting that there are 4 committees in law, with one of which includes a defense committee. Interestingly enough, the German Defense Committee is a closed committee. So unlike our defense committees, it's not open to the public. They highlighted the main focus areas of the Bundestag. And during discussions, perhaps 2 interesting facts that members highlighted were the deployment of the military in Germany, which is the responsibility of the parliament. Parliament actually signs off on the deployments. And around spending aspects, 2% of the German GDP, the NATO mandated 2% of GDP to be spent on defense, which they are pushing for. And there's considerable consensus in the German parliament around additional funding for the defense capability, which is evident in the $100 billion funding package, which was approved by parliament. The budget committee of the German parliament can also not completely ignore what the defense committee says and how it votes. That was an interesting observation that members also raised. And parliament will then approve the deployment when there's deployments of the defense force and parliament is not in sitting. Parliaments will approve the deployments retrospectively, and usually this should be done while the mission is still being conducted. So perhaps in that sense also aligned to how we approach oversight of defense deployments in our parliament. This was followed by a short visit to the Bundeswehr War Memorial, and the next day there was a long engagement, and perhaps for this trip, members will recall this as a very productive day, the engagement with the German Bundeswehr. Members will recall that there were several presentations made and engagements had on this day. Firstly, a briefing on the cyber defense capability of the German Bundeswehr. What members perhaps noted is that an observation by the Bundeswehr in terms of cybersecurity, where they stated it is not a question of if you will be attacked, but when, and that highlights the importance of cybersecurity. Then there was a summary, a briefing on the personnel management, which was quite important to members. Something that members noted during the engagements was that in Germany, they find it difficult to attract young people to the military. Perhaps this is different to our own case, but they've got several retention strategies there to retain the young people. The next briefing was on military career management, and this was of specific importance to members of this committee. Apologies. In terms of military career management, they noted, for example, and this was important given the focus area of this committee, going on the study tour to focus on personnel management and the whole issue around compensation of employees and rejuvenation of the defense force that is needed. So in terms of their military career management, they noted that there's a type of vocational advancement offered by the Bundeswehr, and they offered different types of contracts for 8 and 12-year military service. So in this way, they create structures where people leave during their military career at 4, 8, or 12-year intervals, but they often give them additional vocational training to put them back in the civilian life with a new skill set that they can use in the marketplace. So this was a really interesting observation. I think members took a lot from this engagement for the South African case study. Then there was a briefing on the military university management. And again, members noted that learning opportunities for students from South Africa in other countries, including Germany, is important. Then there was a briefing on the reserve force management. The presentation noted 37,000 assigned reservists in Germany with a further 785,000 available. But they also struggle with recruitment for their reserve force, as we do in South Africa. Lastly, there was a briefing on military budget management, which provided a breakdown of the spending in terms of operating expenses, capital expenses, and private operator models in the German Bundeswehr. Members will recall that late that afternoon there was an engagement then at the South African Embassy with Naval Vessels Lucerne, NVL. The presentation was made by Mr. Schulze from NVL, and he focused on the services offered by NVL, particularly in the area of surface naval shipbuilding and long-term and maintenance of naval vessels. During discussions, members raised a number of important aspects that stood out for them. The one was the joint public-private partnerships that were established by NVL in other countries to boost their naval maintenance capabilities. And I think this was an interesting observation in Germany already, and I think members took this forward from what I've read to the oversight visit last week with the portfolio committee to the naval dockyard, that there is scope for such partnerships perhaps to boost maintenance capabilities. Members also focused specifically on the midlife upgrades of our Navy vessels, Project Biro, as well as spare management, which is a major issue in the SANDF as a whole. The following day, there was also an engagement with Thames and Maritime. They focused specifically on the maintenance of vessels, and during the engagements here, members raised an interest in issues around problems with original equipment manufacturers and how other role players in the defense industry can play a role in assisting countries to sort of circumvent original equipment manufacturers where needed and where more cost effective. There was also a lot of interest in the maintenance model of the German Navy that members raised. The next day, there was an engagement with Rheinmetall. Members will recall, and the discussions during the engagement was around the arms control regime in Germany, and also how Rheinmetall's existing relationship with the NEL is functioning, and how they experience the work of the NCACC and the DCAC in South Africa. The following day, we had quite a long drive. Members will recall to the Unterlüß facility, where we visited the Rheinmetall production facility, where members observed the contrast during our walkabout there to previous visits to the NEL land systems, and how that contrasted with the vibrant activity that's going on at the Rheinmetall facility there. So, members, that was a long ride, 27 pages on the observation, on the engagements we had. It was a very packed week, as members will recall. But from that, what can we take? What were the main observations? And the observations I tried to structure here by extracting key observations around the key themes that this study tour focused on. So firstly, in terms of broader observations around the defense industry, the committee observed the importance of a vibrant domestic defense industry, its potential economic contributions, and the strategic value to the defense readiness of a state. Furthermore, the committee noted generally positive relationships between defense companies and the arms control regimes in Germany and South Africa. However, the committee also noted frustrations in some long delays in the proclamation of a decision by the NCACC, as is the case in the export applications from RDM to Poland and Turkey. There is also a clear need for improvement in the practical application process and procedures, especially in South Africa. This observation amplifies the need for an electronic permit application system to be implemented as a matter of urgency by the DCAC. The committees noted the willingness of the German defense companies to maintain and expand their operations in South Africa, given credence to the potential contribution of the defense industry to economic growth. The committees were informed of very high quality defense products still being produced in South Africa. However, there is little to no acquisition of modern military equipment by the SANDF. The committee therefore observed that South Africa maintains the potential to produce world-class military equipment, but lack the resources to acquire these. Of specific concern to the committee was the observation that the use of legacy systems by the SANDF is becoming increasingly costly, and that the defense companies may become increasingly unable to produce legacy munitions and equipment specifically for the SANDF at a reasonable cost. The committee observed a general willingness of German naval companies to assist the SA Navy in an advisory role regarding its fleet maintenance, while the committee, and I think this is important to state, as members also noted during the visit, while the committees have no intention in promoting any specific company, the study tour did demonstrate the potential value in strategic partnerships around naval maintenance, where it is in the best strategic and financial interest of the Navy to do so. Lastly, around the defense industry, the committees observed a clear need for better planning of equipment maintenance in the SANDF, but that this must be appropriately funded. Clarity and certainty in this regard is not only essential to the SANDF for operational purposes, but also assist industry role players in planning. So that was the observations around the defense industry. The other focus area of the committee during this visit was, of course, around force rejuvenation. And key observations that members raised during engagements could be the following. The committees observed a very coherent personnel management plan in the Bundeswehr that lends itself to creating long-term human resources stability and constant force rejuvenation. Just to pause there, perhaps members, I think that was one of the key observations of this tour, is how the Germans manage their human resources to have constant rejuvenation and stability in their HR section. The committee shows specific interest in the various contrasting models of short-term, medium, and long and career soldiers in the Bundeswehr. Moreover, the Bundeswehr demonstrated a sustainable model of exiting all their personnel from the system in a responsible and humane way by supporting their transition to civilian life through a number of support measures. Then the committees also observed several levels of support by the Bundeswehr to assist soldiers leaving the military, and some of these initiatives include job finding placements and reserving some positions in civil service for former soldiers. The committees observed a balanced Bundeswehr in personnel terms, especially as it relates to the troop-to-general ratio in the force. The committees observed the importance of digital personnel management systems, as well as the need to ensure adequate protection of these systems and information. The committees observed the value added to military educational facilities in the Bundeswehr. And the committee further observed that these institutions offer learning opportunities for soldiers from other countries where bilateral relations exist. In relation to military education, the committees observed that a university degree was a prerequisite for becoming an officer in the Bundeswehr. Of interest was the fact that some of these subjects and degrees include transferable skills to the civilian sector. However, the committee also observed high value placed on vocational training in the Bundeswehr, with several such institutions and the willingness of the institution to provide such training to soldiers being exited from the system. The committees also observed the importance being given to the reserve force in the Bundeswehr and specifically the existence of a clear reserve force strategy that determines the roles and utilization of the reserves. The committees noted the statement that since the end of conscription in Germany, there is a civil-military gap that is expanding, impacting on the ability of the reserve force to recruit members. Perhaps this is a similar observation can be made around South Africa. And lastly, around this aspect, the committees observed that the Bundeswehr spends around 40% of its budget on personnel expenditure. And I think there is the major contrast with South Africa. Even though they have a much larger defense spending capability, the way that they do manage it is is very different. So in addition to the two broad observations based on the key focus areas of the study tour, just 4 more additional overarching observations by the committee that don't fit into those 2 previous categories. The committee observed the importance attached to cyber defense in Germany. In this sense, the committee expressed the need to finalize the cybersecurity bill in South Africa with a specific framework for cyber defense. The committees observed that the geostrategic situation in Europe has significant impact on recent defense expenditure, as is reflected in the €100 billion special defense procurement package in Germany. While this makes comparison to the South African case quite difficult in its current form, it shows that years of limited investment in defense capabilities requires heightened level of expenditure to recover lost capabilities. The committee therefore notes the need for ongoing reinvestment in defense capabilities. Through engagement with naval shipyards in Germany and based on previous work of the 2 defense committees, the committees observed the potential relevance of equipping the SA Navy with offshore patrol vessel capabilities as a more cost-effective means of ensuring maritime security. And lastly, committees observed the importance of using technology as force multipliers in the defense environment. So, members, to finish off with then, based on these observations, we put forward the following recommendations for your discussion and for your consideration. Members did receive these reports, but I'm just going to go through the recommendations quickly, and then members will be free to discuss and we can make amendments as needed. So based on these observations, the following recommendations first, and perhaps one of the key recommendations should be formulated around this. As members will recall, during the engagements there, I think it was the chair or one of the other members that even said it is clear that the current human resources strategy of the SANDF is not working. So a central recommendation based on previous work of the 2 committees, as well as observations in Germany, revolves around the need for stability in the SANDF personnel and related expenditure. The committees therefore recommend that the DoD develops a new human resources strategy or adjusts its current strategy to ensure long-term stability in the SANDF personnel contingent by focusing specifically on force rejuvenation. It is recommended that this plan be developed in consultation with National Treasury and that the plan be fully funded to achieve the desired outcomes. Of specific importance to this recommendation is that the strategy should create a permanent exit mechanism for older soldiers who will not advance in their military careers, and that such an exit mechanism ensures a smooth transition to civilian life through, for example, vocational training, job placement, and or monetary assistance. This strategy should be adapted for the unique socioeconomic conditions in South Africa, on the one hand, and be fully aimed at creating long-term force rejuvenation and compensation of employees' stability in the DoD. I think the last part of this might be important. The socioeconomic conditions in Germany and South Africa are very different, and as such, if such a plan and strategy is developed, it should make provision for the unique socioeconomic conditions in South Africa. Secondly, the committee recommends that the development and finalization of the cybersecurity bill be prioritized to ensure South Africa is better placed to respond to cyber threats and to direct the country's cyber defense capabilities. The bill should make specific provision for cyber defense capabilities, and the SANDF should be extensively consulted in this regard during the drafting of the bill. Related then also, while the cybersecurity bill is unlikely to be finalized soon, the committees recommend that the SANDF continues to develop its cyber defense capabilities and doctrine. The committees recommend to National Treasury to provide additional ring-fence funding for the purposes of cyber defense development. Number 5, the committees recommend the urgent finalization and implementation of the DCAC electronic permit application system and will request quarterly feedback from the DCAC in this regard. The committees recommend that the SANDF and Arms Corps jointly conduct a review of legacy weapon systems that are currently in use in the SANDF, where such systems require specific production of munitions for the SANDF. The SANDF and Arms Corps should then present a report to the Joint Standing Committee on Defence on such systems and future related expenditure for ammunition and upgrades against the cost of replacing such equipment with more modern systems. The high-level report, which should exclude sensitive details, should be submitted to the committee no later than 3 months following the tabling of this report. The committee undertake to visit the Arms Corps dockyard, which has been done already by members, to observe the status of the facility and its ability to serve the SA Navy. The committees will then be able to view the input from the Arms Corps dockyard against input received from naval shipyards in Germany. The committees again call on a final decision on the way forward for Project Hoefyster to be decided, and this will clearly impact on the future of the NEL and will impact on the entire industry value chain in South Africa. And I think members who went to the dockyard last week will recall the presentation on this and the frustrations of the portfolio committee in this regard, that the final decisions have been made, but implementation is not there yet. Third from last, the committees encourage the SANF to make use of training opportunities at German military universities through its standing bilateral relations, and to also consider exchange programs with the German military in the South African Military Academy. Where relevant of sufficient quality, similar learning opportunity with other countries should also be explored to ensure maximum international exposure for SANDF members. Second from last, the committee undertake, where possible, to visit some of the domestic defense industry facilities. While the committees cannot conduct oversight of these facilities, a working understanding of their capabilities and the concerns related to the armaments and force readiness of the SANDF. Lastly, in terms of recommendations, the committees recommend that the PCDMV and Joint Standing Committee on Defence of the 7th Parliament conduct a similar study tour to focus on personnel management and maximization of the defence industry. Progress made on the recommendations in this report should be reviewed against other case studies during the 7th Parliament. Members, those are the recommendations. We've finished by just expressing our gratitude again to those who assisted us at the South African Embassy, specifically the military attaché, Colonel Lesenjana Rapapolana, that was very generous and well organized. I think members will agree that it was a fantastic visit with much to learn. But Chair, I will hand back to you. That is the recommendations that we propose based on the observations. I'm happy to make amendments based on what the members' input is. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Willem, for a well-crafted report that covered all the areas that we both observed and the events as they unfolded under the trip that we undertook to Germany. I will now call upon honorable members. I know it's not all members who managed to attend to this study tour, but you are invited, honorable members, to indicate where we need to strengthen, where you feel that the report needs to be improved. But you are equally welcome to indicate if the report covers all the areas that we were discussing or raised, so that we can move for adoption. That is also welcome. Honorable Mare, Honorable Ryder, Honorable Muthapo.
Yes.
Yes, in that order.
Chairperson, thank you very, very much. I can only say from my personal point of view, this is an incredible comprehensive report. I think our support staff, both Nandipa and Wilhelm, has done outstandingly well. Yes, they've included everything possible and more that I could think of. So I have got no problem, because I can only say again, since I've been in Parliament for the last nearly 17 years, this was by far the best organized overseas trip, the best support and everything that we have experienced on that side. I agree with that last paragraph with regards to the gratitudes that was expressed there. The only thing that I would like to suggest that we add is our support staff. A special thanks to both our support staff. They have really served us well. I think we were treated like kings, and they were always ready to help and support us in any way. So that's my only contribution to add to the report that I would like to make to the committee, because I believe that it is to a large extent due to our support staff that everything was done so well, and that we have had an enjoyable trip and an absolutely value for money for Parliament. It's probably one of the best value for money trips that I can imagine. So that is my proposals and appreciations. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Ryder. Honorable Ryder.
Shall I go? Thank you very much. I apologize. My internet signal here in Acacia Park is on the blink, and yeah, it keeps cutting out. Nonetheless, I'll try and give my inputs if I'm sufficiently audible, Chair. If someone can just confirm if I am audible, please.
You are audible. Please proceed.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, so yes, again, thank you for the for the report. I unfortunately got a little distracted because I received a copy of the report in advance. I made a whole bunch of notes on it electronically, and I put it in a folder. But that folder, I can't access anything out of that folder at the moment. So forgive me if I'm raising something that that was discussed now. But the one item that I wanted to raise is something that spoke specific. The Bundeswehr mentioned that they had developed a national security policy, a national security strategy, and I can't remember exactly the wording that they used. I had written it down on that version of the report, and I don't have it here. But I just want to ask if this is included, Dr. Jans van Rensburg, if you have mentioned it in the recommendations. It is something that that spoke to me at the time, and when I did work through the document a couple of weeks ago, I didn't find a comment on the development of a national security strategy that overarches not only the defense force but all of the different elements of national security. And the indication was that if I recall, that the Parliament had been talking about it for quite some time. It had never actually been developed. And then suddenly when the Ukraine situation hit, there was a new urgency, and they developed that national overarching security policy as a result. And I do think that that is something that we need to learn from that. That is the one thing I just needed to query on the report itself. Chair, then moving on to the gratitudes, and I want to echo exactly what Maria has said. The content of this trip was excellent, and I know that many people accuse parliamentarians of going on junkets and going overseas and partying and having fun. I think we worked really hard while we were there. We had a little bit of fun as well. But you know, I think that overall it was an excellent trip, and I also want to thank our support staff for the organization of it. And perhaps, Chair, can we not, particularly the military attaché and her PA, who I think went way above and beyond what can be reasonably expected of them. If we can add that as an observation, the fact that they did go out of their way and they filled our program to the absolute brim with really meaningful engagements. So I'd prefer if that was a formal observation, and perhaps a recommendation then that emanating out of that we actually send them a formal letter of thanks and acknowledgement of the work that they did for us and in helping us to achieve our outcomes. But very well done. A good report as usual. Thanks. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Mutabo.
Good evening, Chair and colleagues. Let me start by concurring with you, Chair, and my colleagues regarding a well-captured report which reflects most of the issues which we are well aware of. I commend our support staff. However, Chairperson, I think there is still room to improve in terms of communication. You are aware, Chairperson, that in terms of logistics, that was not well communicated to some of us because illegal connections were made. You'll recall that a booking was made for me from Polokwane to Cape Town to Joburg, and then Joburg at 1, and then arriving there at 3, connecting at 20 past 3. Mind you, this was an international trip which needed more time to do that. So, but generally everything was fine. But I don't know whether it's from travel agent side or from our parliamentary staff in terms of communication and logistics, communication in terms of logistics. So I was very much disappointed, Chairperson, in that regard. But overall, everything went well. And I fully agree with my colleagues that the report is well captured. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Dr. Velalem, anything to particularly what the Honorable Ryder raised? Anything to say on that?
Yes, Chair, I just wanted to ask Honorable Ryder, if I recall, I did a quick search. I don't have a reference to the German national security policy in here, but you are correct, and I think that's a very relevant point to include. Just 2 questions on it. If I recall correctly, that was part of the discussion, or it was raised at the German Parliament. If you can just help me remind me where that was discussed, but I think it was the Parliament. And secondly, would you
maybe let me help you. Remember, we had an engagement at the embassy.
Yeah.
On the cyber security issue, and I think it was a colonel who was then deployed to make a presentation to us.
Oh, that last presentation, yes. Okay, so it was about cybersecurity, but in the context of the national security policy. I think so.
Not necessarily national security. Remember, it was about their cyber security. Yeah, we also raised some few questions around their national security, border control, which they are not impacted as they are part of the European Union, so forth and so on. But the main aim of that presentation was around cyber security.
Yes. Okay, I will go back and just amend. But I think you're right. There was discussion about the cyber defense policy as well. So I will just make sure that that is included in that observations around the presentation of that day. Is that fine, Mr. Ryder? Was there anything else from Mr. Ryder around this?
Yeah, he is struggling with connectivity. I'm not sure. Honorable Ryder, are you able to talk to us?
I think
I can talk. I can't respond because I didn't hear half of what is being said. Unfortunately,
I think from my side, Chair, I think Willem has addressed it, and I think if you can just go back and add that, I think nobody of us will have a problem with that, because that was part of the bigger discussion, and yes, it is important for us to talk about, you know, a security strategy going forward. So I think nobody really will have a problem with that addition.
Yeah, I think what's happening now?
You're audible, Mr. Motley.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. No, it's fine. I think we're in agreement. I was just reading the chat, the comment from Honorable Ryder, who is struggling, but indicate that he is happy with the response. I think we can move for an adoption of this report with those amendments.
Chairperson, just my additions and amendments.
Come again?
Can we add those recommendations that I have made, that we must just include? I know that they will not do it themselves, but that we just include a special appreciation to our support staff. So that
I was going there, Honorable Mare.
Okay. No, thank you.
Can we move for the adoption of the report with amendment 1, the inclusion of the cyber security engagement that we have, both that will go to both observation and recommendation. Secondly, the proposal sponsored by Honorable Mare, which I think there's no one who can oppose that. We are in support of that. Can that be included? I know it's not like you'll be writing for yourself, Dr. Willem. You will be capturing our special gratitude towards yourself and Nandipa. And if there's any other person whom you were working with as a team, our special gratitude goes to you and Nandipa for a job well done.
Thank you.
Of course, if it's not 100%, it's 99% with 1% that off that was indicated by Honorable Mutapo. But generally, we are very much delighted by your coordination and your commitment to supporting this joint standing committee, the oversight, and your continuous support. It's not only on the oversight study tour that we took to Germany, even internally in the oversight trip we take, you support us sufficiently, and you support us in every possible way that you can, and we are grateful for that. So that must go in. I don't know. You put it as a note in a manner that you have captured the one for the attaché and her staff. So yeah, I think with that said, can we move for adoption? I think Dr.
I will
Philip, you have
propose.
covered that. Yes. Honorable Marais is proposing. Any seconder?
Mafanya
Honorable
seconds.
Honorable
Thank you very
Mafanya
much.
second. The report is duly adopted with amendments. Can we then move to the next item? Thank you very much, colleagues. Do we have minutes? I think the last item is on minutes.
Chair, can we just perhaps before you move on to the minutes, just a last thing based on what Honorable Ryder said. We just want to inform the committee as well that we, on behalf of the chairperson, letters of gratitude were written to all the participants, everybody that we met with, the German Bundestag, the Bundeswehr, all the defense companies. Letters were written to all the participants of gratitude, expressing the thanks of the committee to those participants. And then a letter was also written to the chief SANDF to express the gratitude of the committee for the work of the military attaché and going above and beyond for her, and her assistance was mentioned in the letter. So I think just to appease members that a follow-up effort was made to really say thank you for the quality engagements we had in Germany.
All right. No, thank you very much. That is noted. Yeah, I think we have adopted the report, and we can move to the next item, which is minutes. I'm not sure. You'll pardon me, colleagues, if I'm taking you back, but I just recall how the attaché was raising concern around remuneration versus the currency of the country that they are deployed to, so forth and so on. Maybe at the later stage, we need to have a discussion and make a recommendation to the chief or to DOD or either the chief, I'm not sure who's responsible, to look into those matters.
Thank you, Chair.
Comrade. Yeah.
And Chair, we will capture that in the minutes of tonight's meeting, then we can take it forward in future meetings. I think it's a valuable contribution.
Yes, no, thank you very much. Let's look at the set of minutes of the 7th September. The agenda was consideration of the Joint Standing Committee on Defense third term program, as well as a briefing by DCAC, consideration of employment letter, and we also considered minutes. In attendance, it's shown there who was in attendance and not in attendance. Next page. Yeah, still attendance from Minister's Office and Parliamentary Support. Consideration briefing by GCAC on their first quarter. Yeah. Let's move to the next page. The engagements there. and the responses provided by NTACC. The next page, consideration of presidential letter of employment. 6, 7, the resolutions and action of the committee. Closing remarks by the chair, and the meeting was adjourned at 2014. Any correction, honorable members?
Chairperson, Honorable Petle. My surname is wrongly spelled. The L comes between the T and the H.
Okay. Can you rectify that? Let's see. Oh.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. That was corrected. That was the only correction. Okay. Can we move for adoption if members are happy?
I propose.
I second.
Honorable Mare proposed and Honorable Petle
I second.
seconded. Okay. The minutes are duly adopted. That was the only set, Dr. Velen?
Yes, Chair, that was the only set.
Oh, all right. No, thank you very much, Nandita. I think this brings us to the end of today's meeting. As we will be closing the meeting, I'm not sure if because I had some challenges when we started the meeting with connectivity. I am not sure if the chair has shared with you, or whether the chair was aware of the incident that took place. I think it's in a place called Komiki.
No, Chair, he didn't, but I support you in that regard.
Okay. Yeah, I think it will be appropriate that we
Yes.
have a moment of silence because the SA Navy submarine Sassaman Dadisi had an incident at Gomeji yesterday. So in that incident, around Cape Town, I think 7 members were affected, and I think I'm not sure if I'll be correct with the numbers. 7 were recovered, but 3 of them passed on, and 1 senior officer in critical condition.
Correct.
So I think that deserves, we need to issue a statement on condolences of the departed as a joint standing committee, and also give our support to those who survived that incident. We will still await the investigation as to what led to the incident, and then be able to comment appropriately when that investigation has been done. So for now, I think let's have a moment of silence for the departed who.
Chairperson, just before we have the moment, with your indulgence, there was also the accident yesterday en route to Luhatla, where the 2 SAMALs were involved. The one was towing the other one, which had a breakdown, tire burst. And also, I think it was 4 that died in that accident. So that was, yesterday was a devastating day for the Defence Force. And I think we must just bring them into our silence and recognition of them as well. And when we issue a statement, we must just include both these tragic events that happened. And we must think about the families.
Yes, of course. They all lost their life in service of
yes,
our transport. Therefore, we need to pay our tribute to them. I wanted to ask Willem to look at the 2 incidents and then assist us to draft a proper statement with accurate information. But with that said, honorable members, let's have a moment of silence. May their beautiful souls rest in peace. Yeah, thank you very much, colleagues. Willem, you'll assist and share, and then whether you'll share it with the chair, I will then inform the chair of that particular resolution that we have taken with regard to this unfortunate incidences that took place. With that said, colleagues, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you.